Welcome back to my channel, and in today's video I'm going to be sharing some tips and tricks to help run your BLOXBURG cafe or bakery. Recently I've been getting in more of the cafe type of mood, so I'm just going to be sharing some things that I found to be really helpful. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So my first tip on running a cafe or a bakery is to have a display case. I cannot tell you how helpful these have been, especially when people don't know what they want. Of course there is a menu, but it's much easier to see what you have in stock and get some ideas for what people want to eat. So yeah, that is the first tip. Okay, so my next tip is kind of essential, especially when you're baking things, but it is to have 2 or more ovens. Maybe it's a new update or something, but for some reason cooking food takes so long in BLOXBURG now. Like, baking like simple cookies takes you like 3 minutes, and I don't know why. But I think it's really essential to have especially like 2 ovens and one that is a little more upgraded and faster. This oven in my kitchen had a little bit of a higher reliability, but I'm assuming that means faster, so I think that should be good. But currently I just have 2 ovens, one over here and then one over there. This tip is definitely helpful when you are trying to bake multiple things at once or making an order for someone. So yeah, that's tip number 2. So tip number 3 has to do more with employees and workers, but when you're running your cafe or bakery, I recommend having someone to make food for you. That worker can put things in the display stand and the cake stand, they can put things in the oven, they can help bake really big orders such as like a full tray of cupcakes or like a full cake or something. They are really helpful when you're trying to fill up an entire display stand because look at this, there is so much room to fill. And display stands really have like the first impact when people come in and they see your cafe, and it kind of shows what level you're on and the food you have. So I think that is essential to have someone who's going to make that for you. Of course, if you do get a worker like this, I do recommend that you make sure that they do have a higher level of cooking, maybe like 6, 7, 8, 9. I know the people out there who are like me and do not like giving other people I do not know roommate, but before they come my worker, I just let them know, please do not steal food, and if you do, you will be blocked and you will no longer work here. I'm usually also always in the kitchen taking orders because the fridge is like right there. So that also helps me to keep an eye out just to make sure no employee is breaking the rules or stealing food. So that is tip number 3. Alright roses, so I'm currently at the outside of my cafe, and this brings me to tip 4, which is to add a garden to earn some extra money. This can be a nice time waster for your employees, especially when putting things in the oven and having to wait for them to bake. You, number 1, get money, especially if it's from apple trees or orange trees or whatever other trees there are in BLOXBURG. And your employees actually raise their skills in the gardening category. So something productive comes out of it for you and for them. So that is tip 4. Alright roses, so the next tip I have in store for you is tip 5, and that is to add security cameras in your business. When you have customers and they go upstairs to go sit down or go outside, it is so hard to see what they're doing sometimes, especially if they're on a whole different level. So that is why I like to add security cameras around my plot, so I always know what people are doing. So I'll show you the ones I have up now. I have this one outside so I can see if anyone pulls in, if anyone's coming. I find this security camera the best because I can make sure people aren't starting any chaos or no one's trying to get my attention. I can just make sure everything's running smoothly up there without having to actually go up there and leave my food unattended or people unattended. So yeah, that is tip number 5. So tip number 5 actually has to do a little bit with tip number 6, but tip number 6 is to have a little cashier counter. What I'm talking about is this little space right here that's next to the display counter. On this, I have a little phone, that way I can invite people. Next, I have my computer over here, which I can check the security cameras. I have this cute little mat just for decorations. I also have the cashier register where people can donate to that or to me. This is helpful because it's right where people walk in and they're not searching for it and you're like, oh, come here to donate or whatever. And it's also nice because everything is just in one little counter. I also need to mention that right next to it I also have my menu, which is really helpful for when people are ordering, they can pay right next to there. So roses, that is tip number 6. Tip number 7 is actually located upstairs, but this is to have a mood station. So many people ask if I have a bathroom or a dresser or something, or anything hygiene related to boost their moods. And I can just tell them it's upstairs, and so much more helpful than having to place a random toilet outside, which I have done a lot previously. I also need to mention that I have a separate room with just a plain bed in it for people with their moods. And I also added a baby crib for if any families come in here and they have a whining baby that is just screaming in my cafe, which people have done, noted. That was a serious growl. Oh gosh, my moods. This is the purpose, guys. I don't need to switch plots just to get a bed. But as I was saying, I don't keep it just to employees because I know customers who come in here don't have a plot, especially in big roleplay servers. So then they can just boost their moods here, and it's very helpful for them and me. Alright, so yeah, that is tip number 7. So number 8 is a tip that I cannot stress enough, and that is do not give the food to the customers first. There have been times where people have stolen from me, or being like, oh, or just grabbed it and then ran away, or people who forgot to pay, or simple stuff like that, and I get really mad about that because I cannot talk to them in real life. They just run away, but you get the point. So for example, if I take this cupcake right here, I take, and they're like, oh yeah, I want a cupcake or whatever. Be like, oh okay, that will be $5 please. And I wait till they pay, and then I set that down on the counter, or I will give it to them. You never place it down on the counter, especially if they have guests, because then they can just swipe it and run. Another thing that goes along with this, and it also goes along with the display case thing, is I like to put the food sometimes on little cake stands if there's not something there in the moment. The nice thing about cake stands is the only people that can pick food up from the cake stands are actually roommates. So if I just put the food right on the cake stand, I wait for them to pay, I pick it up, and then I give it to them. So that is tip number 8. Alright, so the 9th tip I will be sharing with you all today is to advertise in the chat. If you get a plot in a really big BLOXBURG neighborhood, it can be really helpful to tell people about your business in the chat. Now do not excessively spam with this tip. Chats do tend to go fast, but do not spam or people will probably actually get annoyed with your business and not want to come. So some things I recommend you do with this is to put your location in the chat when you send your advertisement, what it's called, and what you sell or what you're doing. So as an example, I've just typed what I usually use to advertise in the chat, and this is what it looks like. For some reason, Roblox usually cuts it off, but look in the chat. So yeah, that is tip number 9. Alright, so my last and final tip for you guys is to have your doors open. I know a lot of times people may walk by and maybe they don't see you inside or something like, oh, it must be closed or something. It's more welcoming and it's a clear giveaway that we're probably open. Another thing that goes along with this is I have my little sign in the front and I have some decorations. I also make sure the layout isn't too confusing, so that way when I walk in, it's not like, oh, where's the register, or oh, where do I order? It's just right there. Alright roses, so those were all my tips for this video, and I really hope you enjoyed watching. I hope you guys found something valuable or useful from these tips, and I'll see you next time. Bye roses! You know I loved you for it, angel, angel.